All right, Pickle, it's time for Math Tuesday.
Math Tuesday.
Here on Math Tuesday, we're going to take a look at some individual statistical leaders. And what got me thinking about this was our conversation.
What got the hamster going?
Our conversation yesterday. Yesterday, we had Moses Patterson, the head coach at McAllen Memorial, on to talk about his Mustangs. The first year, he was an interim coach. He's no longer the interim coach because they won 11-2. But one of the things I remarked upon was the individual playmakers that he had offensively. Most notably, they were one of 6 teams that had 3 1,000-yard rushers.
That is insane.
That's pretty crazy. 6 UIL 11-man teams that had 3 1,000-yard rushers. They had, let's see if I can find them real quickly. I have them on the spreadsheet. It was Max Alanas Choi, Ethan Castillo, and Marcos de la Cruz. Each went for over 1,000 yards. And so I got to thinking about that and those kind of milestones. And one of the things I asked you, and I asked Ish, and I asked Will yesterday in the office, I go, let's talk about what constitutes a good year. Like if you have an exceptional year as a running back, an exceptional year as a receiver, an exceptional year as a quarterback.
And we all threw out the same number, which was cool.
We all kind of came to a consensus. And so first of all, I think we all agreed that if you're at 1,000-yard rusher, you did pretty good.
You ran a lot.
Exactly right. In fact, there were only, and I know this is going to sound like a big number, but it's actually like not that big of a number. There were only 408 UIL 11-man players who went for over 1,000 yards. 408. So if you assume that, like, let's just say that there's only
1,200 schools and then all the running backs in between.
Right, exactly right. 408 players went over 1,000 yards. Do you know who was the state's leading rusher?
Who?
I'll give you a guess.
Malcolm Murphy?
No. Malcolm Murphy was close. But it was, the other problem with Malcolm Murphy was that he was splitting carries with a bunch of guys. Well,
yes.
Who was it?
Caden Roden?
No. The answer was Reuben Owens.
Oh.
Reuben Owens was the state's leading
sense.
rusher, 2,989 yards. Nearly got to 3,000 yards. Second was Ernest Davila at Poteet. Third was Cutter Wilson at Brock. Fourth was Marquise Collins at College Station. And fifth was L.J. Martin at Canutillo. But those are guys who are individual superstars. I'm talking about a stable of backs. And so we mentioned it. Let's throw up the graphic. There were 6 teams that had 3 1,000-yard rushers in 2021. Crosby did. Quincy Jones, Cameron Kirkwood, and Ciaran Miles each went for over 1,000 yards, including 2 guys who went over 1,300. Franklin's the one that I think everybody probably could have guessed. Malcolm Murphy, Bobby Washington, Bryson Washington each went for over 1,000 yards. In fact, they each went for more than 1,400 yards.
They run the slot T, and they run it well.
Pretty nuts. Quinlan Ford, or rather, we'll start with Lubbock Roosevelt. Lubbock Roosevelt had a 2,000-yard rusher in Alex Trevino and another pair of 1,000-yard backs in that kind of wild wing T offense that they ran. McAllen Memorial, we mentioned it in talking with Moses Patterson yesterday. Max Alanas Choi, Ethan Castillo, and Marcos de la Cruz. This one's interesting. Quinlan Ford was the only team to have 2 2,000-yard backs.
Yeah, that's insane.
Caden Roden, Randy Rowan, and Jadonovan Williams each went for over 1,000. But Randy Rowan had 1,100, and then Caden Roden and Jadonovan Williams had 2,200. That is pretty nutso. And then there was Wascom out east, T.J. Feaster, Tashawn Hamilton, and Cole Watson. One thing that I think is interesting about that, I am fairly certain, let me make sure I'm not putting my foot in my mouth, as I am wont to do.
Juniors?
Watson's a sophomore, Tashawn Hamilton's a junior. So 2 of those guys at least are coming back.
Yeah, I'll let you know how heavy that run game state semifinal was between Franklin and Wascom. We were there to watch it. It was nuts.
Yes, it really was. So there you go. There were 6 teams that had 3 1,000-yard rushers. And I think we all agree 1,000 yards in a season, you had a pretty darn good season.
Yeah, that's kind of the staple of excellence there.
So then we kind of asked ourselves, hey, self, what is a great year for a receiver? And what we started with one number, and then there were too many of them. Yeah. And so I narrowed it down even further. We started with 800. I narrowed it down to 1,000. 1,000-yard receiver.
Wow, there were
Right.
enough.
There were and so there were 117,000-yard receivers.
Okay, that shocked us because, yeah, we all came in very adamant on 800 makes you a pretty stinking good receiver.
We're talking elite.
Yeah, absolutely.
117,000-yard receivers in UIL 11-man
That's
football
wild.
this year, including the state's leading receiver. Do you know who it was? He's on this graphic. Everyone's searching over it. Coy Aiken. 93 catches, 2,140 yards, 31 touchdowns. He was the state's leading receiver. Second was Caden Kaufman at Mount Vernon. Third was Lonnie Atkinson at Corpus Christi Miller. Fourth was Pilot Point's Aiden Cox. And fifth was El Paso Eastwood's Curtis Murillo. But what about two 1,000-yard receivers? There were 10 teams that had two 1,000-yard receivers. Byron Nelson in the DFW Metroplex with Landon Ransom goals and Gavin McCurley. Dangerfield had two, and Aaron Hampton, who, by the way, he's like an 8th grader or something. Or I want to say he's super young. But in any case, he's Aaron Hampton, C.J. Gilbert. Dublin had a pair: Christian Ramirez and Cooper Hubble. That's actually 1,250. El Paso Chapin, Timothy Pastron, and Anthony Rivera. El Paso Eastwood, the aforementioned Curtis Murillo and Aaron Rodriguez, both went over 1,000 yards. Leander Rouse had a pair of them, and Troy Oliver and Jalen Becerra. Marlin, Darian Gillette, and Trajan Butler. I want to say that Darian Gillette I know is coming back, and then Trajan Butler I believe might be underclassman as well. Prosper had a pair of them,
and they could both run.
Yeah. Tyler Bailey and Houston Hawkins were both over 1,000 yards. Spring had a pair of them, and Travis Sims and Caden Bradley, and then the aforementioned Stephenville with Reese Elston, and then the state's leading receiver in Coy Aiken. So there were 10 teams that had 2,000-yard receivers in 2021. And so now here's what I want to do. Is I want to take I want to talk about balance, and I want to talk about having all the weapons, okay? So we mentioned there were a 1,000-yard rusher, pretty good year.
Yes.
A 1,000-yard receiver, pretty good year. And I would say if you have a 2,500-yard passer, you're doing pretty good. There were only 97 2,500-yard passers this year. Okay. Now, obviously, the passer and the receiver are going to be tied together, but there were only 25 teams that had a 2,500-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, and a 1,000-yard receiver. I think some of these are not necessarily surprising. I don't think
the two at the bottom left corner.
Correct. Right.
Rockwall and Rockwall Heath, not surprising.
Both had 1,000-yard. Both had that trio.
Westlake, not surprising.
Westlake, not a surprise. Westlake had, of course, Cade Klubnik. They had their sophomore running back Jack Kaiser, and then they had their receiver Jaden Greathouse, all there. But there were a few. Gilmer also not a surprise on this
with
list,
Brandon
right?
Tennyson.
Lorena, not a surprise. Few of them. But there were a few of them that I think really surprised me. For example, did you know that Crandall had all three? With their quarterback, Jamonte Gordon-West, their running back, Chris Abram, and their wide receiver, Luke Moffitt. They went over. They had that triumvirate. I was kind of surprised to see that Seymour did the deal. Now, part of it is that they had, I believe, the state's only 2,500, 1,000 guy at quarterback in Keegan Gilbreth, sophomore. He threw for 2,900 yards and he ran for 1,000 yards. They also had David Charo, a 1,400-yard receiver.
Is that Corpus Christi Miller?
That is Corpus Christi.
Wow, okay.
Corpus Christi Miller had the trio. Jaden Brown, the sophomore quarterback, was thrown to Lonnie Atkinson, and then they also had a back in Ethan Greenwood who threw for 1,100 yards. I also thought it was interesting that, we talked on the last one about El Paso Eastwood and El Paso Chapin each had a pair of 1,000-yard receivers. El Paso Franklin had the trio. They had Cameron Bird at quarterback, they had Bo Sparks at wide receiver, and they had Miles McCorder at running back. They had the trio.
There were playmakers out there in the 915 this year.
There certainly were. And so you look up and down there, it is an interesting mix of teams. Millsap did the deal. Millsap.
Let's go.
Lawson Nairn, the quarterback, was a 3,000-yard receiver. Isaac Bordelais was on the other side, and they had an 1,800-yard rusher in Waylon Dunn. So that's what I thought was particularly interesting, was taking a look at which teams were able to do a little bit of everything. Have that 2,500-yard passer, the 1,000-yard rusher, and the 1,000-yard receiver. It's a short list. There's only 25 of them that were able to do it. To have all of those things, and obviously a lot of underclassmen, right? A lot of underclassmen on this list as well. So I thought that was a little interesting to dig into on that Tuesday, was which teams had the highest concentration of big-time playmakers. You can find that. I'm going to put a piece up on TexasFootball.com coming up talking about Texas high school football's most prolific playmakers and where they were most concentrated. But yeah, I thought that was pretty
That is very interesting.
By the way, do you know who the state's leading passer was? We talked about receiver and rusher. Do you know who the state's leading passer was?
I mean, it's got to be Klubnik, right? No?
because remember, he missed a bunch of games.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Won a state championship, underclassman. How about that?
Oh, man.
Throwing to the state's leading receiver.
Oh, Ryder Lambert?
Ryder Lambert, 42.75. He led the state in passing. Second was Andrew Martinez, El Paso Eastwood. Third was Chris Teaton at Dublin. He was the only other 4,000-yard passer.
Wow.
Jackson Arnold was fourth, and Jacob Wilson from Byron Nelson was fifth. By the way, 4 of those top 5 receivers or quarterbacks, and 7 of the top 10 juniors.
Yeah, I was just going to say, no, I didn't realize that. I don't know why. I just put together that whole piece. I thought Ryder was a senior the whole time. That's crazy.
Desmond Woodson at Marlin, Braden Bennett at Mount Vernon, Mason Shorb at Leander Rouse, Jacob Wilson at Byron Nelson, Jackson Arnold at Denton Geyer, Chris Teaton at Dublin, and Ryder Lambert at Stephenville. All in the top 10 passers in the state, all underclassmen.
Which is so funny because think about what we've been talking about for the last 2 years is how good the quarterback class of 2022 was with Klubnik, with what was supposed to be Quinn Ewers, all of that. And then it's like they're like, hi, guys, we're not going anywhere.
And by the way, that doesn't count Ashton Dubose,
Nope.
Keldrick Luster, Jaden Brown, who's a sophomore, Corpus Christi Miller, Jason Thompson, Austin Novosad, Connor Cuff, Bo Edmondson. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you're looking for... There is a really good young crop of quarterbacks that are going to be seniors and, in some cases, juniors this year. The future's super bright in Texas high school football.
That is exciting.
Anyway, I'll have a piece up on TexasFootball.com.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.